Hello, my name is Dave Dinkel. I've been a real estate investor since 1975, and this is number one in a series of video articles that talk about common issues in foreclosure. I mentioned on the previous video, the introduction that I had, that I have a book called 32 Ways to Quickly Stop Your Foreclosure that can be found at www.stopmyforeclosuremess.com. This first video article is going to be about two very common misconceptions that people in foreclosure have. The first one is that the bank wants to take your property. They're trying to steal your home from you. Well, the banks really don't want to own a real estate portfolio, and there's a couple reasons for it. First of all, they're mostly not in the city that you're in, so they have to deal with a property that's a long way off, and they have to rely on other people to do it. And that doesn't always necessarily work out as well as they'd like it to. But more importantly, the Federal Reserve has special requirements that in the event, let's say you have a $200,000 home, you go into foreclosure, the bank's required to put aside a cash reserve or allowance of between 5 and 10 times the actual amount of that loan on the property. So if you have a $200,000 loan on your property, the bank could be required to put in as little as $1 million or as much as $2 million into cash reserves. Now that doesn't make sense on the surface, but it's the Federal Reserve's attempt at keeping the banks from making, in effect, bad loans, because it's not the cash reserve that's the problem. The real problem to that lending institution is it takes away their leverage in making additional home loans, because when they loan on your property at, say, 7% to pick a number, they're not taking that out of customer funds that they're paying nothing on in a checking account. Generally, they're borrowing that money from the Fed Reserve, or they're borrowing it from customers who they're paying interest on. So they're not making 7%. They're making as little as 1% and perhaps as much as 3% in good times. Now, they can't make a living on that. So what they need to do is have the leverage the Federal Reserve gives them to borrow large sums of money. Now, I said this was kind of a fallacy, but let's look at it closer. If you're in foreclosure and you have a lot of equity in your home, why wouldn't the bank want your home? Let's talk about it. They want your home. Let's not say why wouldn't they. They want your home because they can sell your home and get the equity. So does the bank really want your home? They don't want your home unless it makes sense to make a profit for them to sell your home in the open market. In some parts of the country, the Midwest for example, very seldom does that happen. In those areas of the country, they oftentimes do not allow a homeowner to refinance and cash out any money at all for any reason. However, in the rapidly appreciating areas of the country, like California and Florida and Arizona and some of the others, they were happy to take back properties and sell them into a rising market. Now that's changed dramatically in 2007. So the answer to that first question is, does the bank really want to own your home? Only if it's profitable to the bank. The second widely accepted misconception is that because of the nature of the documents you receive from the bank, it says your loan has been accelerated and you owe the full amount due. So oftentimes foreclosure victims say, well, I owe $200,000 and they want all the money and they want it before it goes to the auction, and the auction is in 2 weeks or 30 days or less or whatever the time period is in your state. That's not true. They don't want all of the money. What they want actually is the reinstatement amount, the money you're behind. Now they'll take all the money if you're willing to try and run around and get it for them. But more than likely what you want to try and do is just make up the difference. Now, oftentimes that's not easy because the bank doesn't cooperate. Let's say you're laid off for an amount of time and you've saved enough money now that you're working again. So you can give them about half of the amount that's due. Let's say the amount due is $10,000. The bank's not going to take the $5,000. They have requirements in their loan documents that they take it all or none. Now there is very simple solutions to that. So when you see your loan your loan documents or the documents from the courthouse that say your loan has been accelerated it's due and payable in full, that's not necessarily true, and in fact it isn't true. That's what they're asking for, but they're almost always willing to accept less. And back in the good old days, I said to you that I bought my first property in 1975. In those days, the way I bought that was I just assumed the loan that was on the existing property. But the lending institutions couldn't make enough money doing it that way because the big dollars are in the closing costs, because the average homeowner only stays in a loan about 5 years. So in the 1980s, they pressured Congress into passing a law that allowed them to put what's called a due on sale clause in their loan documents. All loan documents have that now, and it simply says that if you transfer or sell your property, the loan is due in full and immediately. Well, there is no due on sale jail because this is contract law, and it's a very common principle of investing where investors go in and take over your loan on a due on sale clause. In other words, they do it as subject to the existing loan, and they just start making your payments. I'll go into that in much greater detail in another article. For right now, this is the end of the video, article number 1, and we've resolved 2 issues for you. Does the bank want your property? Possibly. Do you owe all the money that the bank is asking for? Should never owe all the money, and you can reinstate it. The only time you would owe all of it is on the day of the auction if the bank's not cooperative, and I have ways that you can make the bank cooperative in the book. So thanks for being here. If you haven't seen our other coursework, please go to stopmyforeclosuremess.com, and again, thanks.